got incredible footage from the security cameras of him throwing buckets all over the stable because they were put back in the wrong spot. And thankfully for us, it was the morning that the security cameras had first been turned on. So when the man came in to show us how to rewind the footage, we sort of said, could you take us back to about 9 a.m? And so he's gone back to about 9 a.m. and we're all standing around there staring at it, just waiting for it. And then next thing you just see Moody come out and start pegging buckets left, right and centre and having an absolute tanty. And we were just crying, and this poor man goes, I wondered why the cameras were all wet.
G'day sports fans and welcome to Quinny's Stablemates. Our very special guest today, my favourite part of the Moody Coleman combination. A warm welcome to Kat. Thanks for having a chat.
Thanks very much for having me.
Now the aim today is to share some funny stories about your co-trainer Pete, but in all seriousness, I want people to now know the full story behind the Coleman to the Moody Coleman team, because I think a lot of people think of you as an overnight success when it's anything but the case.
Yeah, definitely. Since being with Pete, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, really, especially the last 12 months since the partnership's been official. But yeah, there's probably a decent backstory to that and a lot of hard work that's gone into getting to the position that I am today.
We'll start by taking a look at that backstory. A young girl growing up in WA who just loved her horses.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have riding lessons at a local riding school when I was young. I think I was inspired by the Saddle Club, of all things, and just really developed a passion for it. I had terrible hand-eye coordination, so I was no good at any other sports. So thankfully I found something that I was sort of good at in horse riding, and we had a family friend that had an old horse that was just sitting in the paddock doing nothing, and so they sort of suggested that I come and start riding that horse and going to Pony Club and sort of coming through the equestrian pathways there, doing some eventing before eventually Mum and Dad bought me my own horse when I was about 13, I think. So yeah, they were big supporters there.
So Rob and Heather, your parents, and very proud parents of your training career. We'll get to that later on, especially that magical day at Flemington. But what was it like initially? Were they very encouraging with you going on the horses? Were they a bit nervous and apprehensive? Because you're not traditionally from a horse racing family.
Yeah, definitely. Dad had owned a few shares in very slow race horses over the years, but other than that, there's not really a family involvement. Mum, God bless her, had to sort of learn how to tow the horse float and everything to take me all over Western Australia for different horse shows and things like that. And they certainly, I'm sure there are a few nervous moments over the years. I was quite accident prone as well, so they were pretty staunch on the fact that I wasn't allowed to have a mobile phone when I was 13. You sort of get to high school and that's the age that you want to be getting a mobile phone and being pretty cool, and they were flat out, no, we're not having it, you're too young. And then I fell off my horse out riding in the bush one day and broke my collarbone and had to walk home because I had no way of contacting them. So pretty shortly after that, I got my first mobile phone.
Geez, talk about going to the extreme just to get your mobile phone as well, sacrificing your collarbone. You mentioned you had a few falls. Was the broken collarbone the worst of the injuries? Were there a few more injuries and falls along the way?
Few more along the way. I got the all clear to get back riding after I broke that collarbone, and I think probably 3 months to the day I fell off again and broke it again. So safe to say maybe I'm a little bit of a slow learner in some regards. But no, the worst one I'd have to say was a couple of years later I actually fractured my femur riding a young racehorse when I'd started my first job in racing, which was a bit of a nasty one.
So where was that and how did that happen?
So I'd started working for a small trainer in Bunbury whose daughter had done Pony Club with me, and she was an apprentice jockey at the time, and he had some pre-trainers and did a lot of breaking in. So I'd started working there just to get a bit of a foot in the door, and I adored it. They taught me so much there, and unfortunately, one morning we just had a bit of a mishap with a young fresh horse, and it reared up and came down on top of me, and unfortunately I was a bit slow to get the leg out of the way, and that probably suffered the brunt of it.
How scary is it when that happens, or is it just such a blur you don't even take in what's happening?
Yeah, I think when those things happen, like quite often, it all happens so fast. As you get more experience, you probably learn to read the play a bit better, and you get a bit of a feel for when things are going to go pear-shaped, and you can look after yourself or get yourself out of those tricky situations. But when you're still young and learning, then yeah, it all sort of happens pretty fast, and next thing you know, you're on the ground and you're in a bit of bother. Yeah, so I finished year 12 and always sort of had the plan that I would go to university. Mum's a physio, and I always sort of really admired how much she loved her job when I was growing up and how passionate she was about it. And that sort of side of, the probably sports science side of it interested me as well. So I had a gap year after finishing year 12 and worked full-time with the horses for a year. And after that, sort of headed up to uni and did 6 months there before going, ooh, hang on a second. I actually really miss working with the horses, and maybe that's what I want to try and look at doing seriously as a career.
So how did mum and dad cop that when you've got into university, you're 6 months in and you say, I might just pivot back to my passion?
They were so supportive. Whether between themselves, they sort of had a discussion and said, oh, this girl's an idiot. But no, to their credit, they fully supported me every step of the way.
So that's going along nicely over in WA, but then the big smoke of Victoria comes calling.
Yes. So I guess growing up in WA, you always saw Sydney and Melbourne as the pinnacles of racing in Australia. And, that's where the spring carnivals are, the autumn carnivals. It's where you've got the best trainers, the best horses and the best jockeys. And so growing up in Western Australia, I always thought, gee, it'd be good to go over and work for a big stable in Melbourne or Sydney. But I guess Melbourne probably appealed that little bit more to me, probably seeing those big races, the three majors, the Melbourne Cup, the Caulfield Cup and the Cox Plate. You see them growing up, and that's sort of what you recognise and aspire to. So that was sort of the appeal, was to come over and work in a big stable for a couple of months and then go home again.
And then you headed over to Caulfield?
I did, yeah. So the Yule family who I was working for in Western Australia, they broke in horses for Simon Miller, who at the time was the Aquanita trainer in Western Australia. And when I sort of said I'd love to come over east, they spoke to Simon and he spoke to a few guys over here, and they sort of hooked me up with the Aquanita setup at Caulfield. So I came over and started working for Robert Smurden.
What was working for Robert like? Because we know that he's an eccentric character but a great horse person.
Yeah, he was unbelievable to work for. My time at Caulfield and my years there working for him were, some of the best and the most fun years that I can look back on now. And he had an incredible attention to detail, and when he set a horse up for a race, it wasn't often that he got it wrong. And he was just he was a really, really smart man.
Now, you're at Caulfield and you're not only exposed to Robert Smurden, but there was that great trainer's hut at Caulfield where they were like a footy team. They were, in essence, rival trainers, but they were friends and they helped each other out. And I'm talking about Peter Moody, Mick Price, Clinton McDonald, Colin Little, so many great trainers, so many great characters.
Yeah, it was a very funny time over there, and the trainers just had a great camaraderie, and that sort of filtered down through all the staff as well. At the old Aquanita stables, we were probably the furthest away from the track, but we could ride out from our stable and you'd sort of bump into someone from Moody's or someone from Price's, and you all knew each other and you'd go out and work your horses together, and it was just the best atmosphere there. Everyone was sort of friends outside of work as well, and it was, there were definitely some very good years there at Caulfield.
The one thing I will say, was it ever a challenge being a much younger girl from the other side of the country coming into that situation? Because I dare say you would have been a little bit different than most of the other people you were working with and against.
Yeah, definitely. And actually when I first came over, Mum drove over with me. So we had a bit of a road trip across the Nullarbor and came over, and they'd said to me, the guys at the guys in the office at Aquanita, oh yeah, we've got some staff accommodation, so you don't need to worry about that. We've got a couple of staff houses, and so anyway, we've sort of rolled up, not really sure what to expect there, and safe to say it wasn't exactly 5-star accommodation. I think we were across the road from a very suspect-looking massage parlour, and a couple of the windows didn't shut properly, and I think Mum spent about 3 days cleaning the place from top to bottom before she felt safe leaving her 19-year-old daughter there.
Now, I'll jump forward to the current scenario where you're co-training with Pete, and I dare say, would you be doing something 7 days a week? Is there a day you have off, or does it just not happen?
No, so it works out really well. I think that's one of the great things about the training partnership, and where, I think I'm incredibly lucky that Pete is pretty mindful of sort of trying to have some resemblance of a work-life balance for both him and for myself. And whilst we do still, work very hard and probably put in some crazy hours, we also try and make sure that, if we don't need to be there on a Sunday, then we're sort of having that as a bit of downtime. One of us will probably go in at some stage and check the runners from the Saturday before, but otherwise we sort of do generally try and have Sunday as our quiet day.
And a social life, how hard is it?
I think you sort of, a lot of your social circle are people within the industry, so they're in the same boat. And at the end of the day, it's one of those things like, yes, we get up early in the morning, but it's not as big a deal as, it might seem. You still got to go. You still go out for dinners. You still enjoy yourself. You still live your life. We choose to work in an industry where we get up early, and you can't let that sort of dictate everything.
True, but if you're having dinner with friends or on a date or something like that, is there a time where you're looking at your watch going, oh my God, I need to get to bed, which I dare say is much, much earlier than your average person?
Only if it's a really terrible date.
Do you want to name some people that you might have given that excuse to at 6:15 that you need to leave then?
No, I think we'll keep that one under wraps.
So you can stretch it out a little bit though. You can...
Yeah, definitely. And it's just one of those things, you know yourself, you might have a late night, but then you can think about it and go, well, you know what, like I'll try and get a little nap in tomorrow, or, you make it work.
So you worked at Robert Smurden's at Caulfield. You had a lot of success there and no doubt learnt a lot. And then you pivot to Chris Waller at Flemington. How did that come about and how was the move received?
Yeah, so I'd been working for Robert for a while, and a role at Chris's Flemington stable as the foreman there opened up. And this was, I'd say it was maybe a couple of months before Winx won her third Cox Plate maybe. So they were obviously, the stable was flying. They were sort of a big name to be reckoned with. And I'd always sort of tried to have the attitude that I wanted to learn from the best people. If I wanted to one day be the best, then you've got to be learning from the best people as well. So sort of with that in mind, that I made the move over to Waller's stable. And that was incredible. I was there for about 2 years, and in that time we had horses like the Autumn Sun come through, and he won the Caulfield Guineas. We obviously had Winx and Young Star, and just some really, really special horses through that time.
What was Chris like?
He's very different to Pete. They're probably polar opposites in some ways. Chris is sort of, until you get to know him that little bit better, he can be quite hard to read. And at times you sort of weren't really sure, does he know my name? Does he know who I am? That sort of thing, especially with the main stable being in Sydney and we were based down at Flemington, so I didn't have as much one-on-one contact with him. But once you get on sort of a bit more sure footing with him, I suppose, he's fantastic, and he still makes a point now of sort of saying hello when he comes down for the spring carnivals and things like that, and saying he's proud of of the success that we've had with our stable and things like that. So he's pretty good in that regard.
What are one or two things that he does that makes him so successful?
The systems that he has in place are just so thorough, and I think when you've got multiple stables spread out across different states, you need that. He's also got incredible people working around him because, again, when you're spread out like that, you need to, you can't be in 3 places at once, so you need to have people in place to run these systems that you have and that you can also trust. And so, yeah, he's got incredible people around him and really, really thorough systems that he swears by.
Now, while you were there, Winks won her 4th Cox Plate. The Autumn Sun won a Caulfield Guineas. Now, in both those races, they were hot favourites. They were expected to win. When they did win, was it a sense of euphoria and great celebration or almost relief and job done?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it was a sense of relief and job done. I think for me, it was probably still a real buzz as well, just being around horses winning these big races like that. And with the Autumn Sun, the lead up was probably extra special as well because there was a bit of a miscommunication as far as the organisation of jockeys for the Tuesday morning went. And so just before he had his final gallop, Chris has rolled in and said, "Right, Kat, get on the horse. We've got no jockeys here. You're going to have to ride him in his gallop." And so thankfully he was working in a pair, but it was the first time I'd ever sat on him or even been on the Flemington course proper. So that in itself was pretty special for the little girl from WA. So after he won, I was pretty happy to see that I hadn't buggered it all up.
That's amazing. How did he feel? I mean, I know it sounds obvious because he was a superstar. And did he feel like a Ferrari in track work?
He did, but he was still such a baby. He was a colt, but he was incredibly well-natured. And he was just a really big baby. I don't think he knew how good he was at that stage. And he's one of those horses that it would have been so interesting to see him race on as an older horse.
Or race against Winks in a Cox Plate. Now, if Winks wasn't Winks, do you think we would have seen the Autumn Sun in a Cox Plate?
Yeah, look, I know when you get those sorts of colts, it's pretty tempting, and it would have been very, very interesting to see what he could have done in a Cox Plate without the superstar mare there.
Did you ever sit on Winks?
No, I didn't. I used to ride her workmate Invincibella quite a lot, so quite often I was next to her, but never on top of her, which was probably maybe a blessing. That would have been a very stressful job, I think.
I think it would have been good fun, though. It would have been nice to sit here and talk about the Autumn Sun compared to Winks. Now, after working for Waller for 2 years and having great success, Peter Moody comes out of retirement. The superstar is back in the sport, and you think maybe I'll pivot to the big Queenslander.
Yeah, well, it was quite funny. I was probably at that point where I was just starting to think, what's my next move going to be? Am I going to be able to make a career in this industry? I don't want to just be a foreman forever. I sort of want to take that next step. And being someone that doesn't have family backing in the industry, it can be very hard to then go on and make that next step. So I was sort of at a little bit of a crossroads as to what I wanted to do or how I was going to do it. And Pete came out and announced that he was sort of coming back and coming out of retirement. I made a couple of jokes to the guys at Waller's, and I sort of said, right, that'll be me. I'm going to be out of here. That's my go right there. And we had a bit of a laugh about it. And then a couple of days later, I was at the races strapping one of Waller's horses, and Pete popped up and said, "You and I need to have a chat, doll."
He'd go to HR for that in most workplaces, but fortunately at Moody and now Moody Coleman Racing, that's just the way he is. How did that chat go down?
Yeah, look, I think from the get-go, as soon as he said it, I said, I don't think we need to have a chat. It's just going to be a yes. I'm in. And we ended up meeting up and having lunch a couple of days later, and he just sort of outlined what he was looking for. He wanted someone to come on as assistant trainer for a few years with the view that if it went well and we got on well and worked well together, that eventually he would want to go into a partnership.
That's outstanding. Now, what did he say that he saw in you for that partnership? What were some of the things you were going to bring to the table that would alleviate stress in his life, help his stable, and make it a real partnership as opposed to him being the boss?
Yeah, I think he just sort of wanted to see someone that was going to bring a little bit of, youth and enthusiasm to it. And some things I still get a huge kick out of that he's probably been around for that bit longer, whereas he sort of just goes, it's just another day at the office.
Like what? What would some of those things be?
Oh, look, I just remember when we had our first winner in the partnership, first runner and first winner. And obviously that was very, very special for both of us. But, otherwise it would have just been a maiden winner on Pakenham Synthetic in the middle of, or at the start of August. It wasn't anything to get too carried away about, but instead, we were there jumping around, carrying on like idiots. So, yeah, I guess that's that side of it too. It sort of allows him to see it through a different perspective.
Now, that horse you referred to was Run Sir, and as you said, your first runner was a winner. What was it like, not just winning the race, but seeing your name in the form guide and being officially a horse trainer?
Yeah, look, it's still something that I get a kick out of now. I think when we were in Sydney earlier in the year for a couple of horses up there, I can't even remember which horses they were, but I just remember Moods caught me staring up at the signs above the horse stalls that flash up. It says the horse's name and then it changes to P. Moody and K. Coleman, and he caught me just staring up at it with stars in my eyes, and so he was like, can see you doing that.
Just wind him up and say you're just lucky the Moody part's still there.
Yeah. No, well, he winds me up and he says, the Moody part's not going to be there forever. I want to take a back seat. I want you to do more. And I'm the one saying, no, you're not going back into retirement anytime soon, old boy. You got another few good years left in you.
Just like he says he's got a boutique stable, which has got, how many horses on the books now? About 300?
Oh, not quite that many.
250?
Not quite that many.
225?
Lower it down tiny bit. We're only small.
Oh, see, he's brainwashed you. Now, not long after that first win, you go to Flemington and your parents, Rob and Heather, come across from WA to watch you train at Flemington, live out your dream as a young girl to go on and not only be a horse trainer, but be a horse trainer with runners at, in my opinion, the most famous racetrack in the world. And they were just glowing with pride that day. How special was it?
Yeah, that was incredibly special. We'd always sort of had a bit of a deal that they would come over for the first runner or first city runners that we had. So to have them there at Flemington was amazing. And we didn't have a winner that day, but it didn't matter. Just being able to be in that position to have mum and dad there and have runners, like you said, it's such an iconic racetrack. It's something that I'll remember forever.
Now, for 10 years, basically, you have been part of stables in Victoria. We've spoken about your Smurden career, your Waller career, your time under Moody's tutelage. What was the difference like, though, when they're under your name? Because you basically have done the same thing for 10 years, but this time it obviously meant a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. I think even sort of the whole time that I've been working back with Mood since we started back up again, it's probably meant a lot more to me, just even sort of having in the back of my head that one day, my name's going to be up there, or my name might be up there next to his if things go well. And he's always made me feel very much a part of the team and the decision making and everything like that from when I first came on as his assistant. So to then actually be able to sort of see that through and have my name up there, it gives it sort of gives you an incredible sort of kick along, and you do take that pride in it as well.
Now, Moods, we love him. He's a great character. He can be grumpy, and he can be a diva, and he can give a spray. Have you copped any genuine sprays off him?
So a good one early on when we'd sort of just started back up again, and initially we had, I think we had 40 boxes there at Pakenham, and we only filled it, with about 15 horses for the first week or so, and he panicked a little bit and decided that we didn't have enough horses. So he went out and he just found horses from God knows where and filled the stable up overnight, basically. But we only had the staff really to deal with 15 horses, not 40 horses, and so this led to him being quite stressed. And he gave me a spray one day about us not having enough staff. And he reckons then that I didn't stop for the next sort of, 12 hours. I was just running around like a lunatic, just trying to work as hard as I possibly could to make up for not having more staff to keep him happy. And so he sort of felt pretty bad after that.
Oh, there we go. So he does feel remorse for his actions and his tantrums and whatnot. How much of it, though, is theatre? I mean, even around the stables, he has these great theatrical blow-ups and people now barely bat an eyelid at him. It's almost like, it's Moods, don't worry about it, which I dare say is totally different to Christopher John Waller, where if he raised his voice, people would be like, my goodness, what's going on here?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of, Part of the beauty with Moods is that he'll have a blow up, he'll say what he wants to say, gets it off his chest, and then he moves on. And you always know exactly where you stand with him because he's never shy. If you've upset him or you've done something that he's not happy with, he will tell you. He doesn't hold back. And I think that's, part of the beauty of it, and the fact that I think he and I have such a good working relationship, because I feel completely confident in the fact that, if I'm not doing well enough, he's going to damn well tell me that. So, when he's not saying much, you've sort of got to just run with that and take that as high praise.
Now, I hope he never hears this part, okay? So, P. Moody, if you're listening, please tune out now. What makes him such a great trainer and so great to work with?
He has this incredible aura, is that the right word? Or this knack about him that just makes people want to work hard for him and want to make him proud and want to make, you'd go to war for the man. And I don't know if that's his work ethic, it's his charisma, it's all of that combined. And one day I really hope that, I can sort of, get the same response from people that work for me. But he, he'll give a pep talk to the jockeys before they go out and ride, or he'll give the staff a bit of a rev up at times like that. And yeah, like I said, you generally go to war for the man. So exactly what it is or how he manages it, I'm still working out, but ask me in a few more years and hopefully I've got it down pat.
No, he has got great people skills. I'll have to concede that. He can have a tantrum. What have been some of your favourites?
We've got incredible footage from the security cameras of him throwing buckets all over the stable because they were put back in the wrong spot. And thankfully for us, it was the morning that the security cameras had first been turned on. So when the man came in to show us how to rewind the footage, we sort of said, could you take us back to about 9 a.m? And so he's gone back to about 9 a.m. and we're all standing around there staring at it, just waiting for it. And then next thing you just see Moods come out and start pegging buckets left, right and centre and having an absolute tanty. And we were just crying, and this poor man goes, I wondered why the cameras were all wet.
Is there any chance we can get that footage? I think we could have a lot of fun with it.
I'm sure you could, but I also might be out of a job if that were the case.
All right, you wash your hands of it from here and leave it with me, and I'll chase that down. So there we go. I'd love to get the footage of Moods just literally throwing the buckets around. And as you said, having a tanty. Now, you've probably been called many things in your life, but none of them would be sweeter than Group 1 winning trainer. Now, before you started co-training, you identified Chain of Lightning as your favourite horse, and she would go on to put your name up in lights by winning the TJ Smith Stakes. What was that like, winning your first of many Group 1s?
Yeah, that was incredible. She's been a really special horse to me, and I'm not entirely sure what it is about her, but I've just gelled with her from day one. She was a little bit of a difficult ride early on, and she sort of, was one that I just spent quite a bit of time with. I'd ride her each morning. She gets quite muscle sore at times, so she required probably a bit of extra attention than your regular horse. So I was spending a fair bit of time with her, and when she came out early on in her career and she put those wins together in a row, and she sort of showed us that really nice ability, and she's always sort of just been a really special horse to me from early on. So she went through a bit of a form slump, I guess. She had a brilliant prep, and then we ran her on some hard tracks, and she sort of didn't really appreciate that, and she wasn't running up to her best, and she only had a short break, came back, and still probably wasn't quite reaching the same heights that we knew or we hoped that she could. And so we gave her a long spell, and when she came back from that, sort of, she was back to being the horse that we sort of knew and knew that she could go out there and run some really good races. And just that last preparation that she had, she went to Sydney and she won up there. And when she came back that Sunday, when she got off the truck, she just waltzed into the stable like she owned the place, and she was sort of marching around, and we said, I think she's really back this preparation. So after that, the TJ was the next logical step for her, which also was where I Wish I Win was going. And, he's such a superstar, and he's got such a big hype around him as being one of the country's best sprinters. So Chain definitely went there sort of as the underdog in plenty of ways. And, watching that race, I was at Caulfield because we'd had runners there that day, and Pete was in Sydney, and we were in the trainer's room there, and I just didn't know where to look. I mean, Chain was in front and she kept kicking, and then Wish was steaming home as well. And by the end of it, I was just thinking, oh, God, one of you please win this.
Were you cheering for one over the other, or it didn't matter, as long as one of them won?
Yeah, look, as long as one of them won, in hindsight, the fact that it was Chain, she's I'm not allowed to have favourites, but she sort of is just quietly between you and I. She's always been a very special horse to me. So the fact that she was able to win, my first Group 1, and it being such an iconic race in the TJ Smith Stakes, it was very, very special.
And extra rewarding as well, because she started her career brilliantly. I think a lot of people just thought that horse will go on and win a Group 1 race, and then she did lose her way a little bit. So the fact that you and the team put so much into her, made the right decisions, and then got her to reach that talent she showed must have been super rewarding.
Yeah, it was definitely. And, to have a horse that we've had, like you said, so much to do with, she's sort of a real stable favourite. Everyone knows her little grey face poking out over the box door, and she's been around for a few seasons now. So to have her, be such a part of our stable and a definite favourite among a few people at a few of the staff as well, it definitely makes it that bit more special.
Now, when you said grey, I noticed you did look at the side of my hair. I'm getting that fixed tomorrow at Rock Ebony, so I will not be grey after that. But don't think I didn't pick up on that one, and there will be retribution down the track for that. Now, you wouldn't have to wait long for your next Group 1 success. I Wish I Win, after just being pipped, came out and won the Kingsford Smith Cup. Again, that must have been quite rewarding because he'd been running so well, but without winning.
Not to sound like a snob, but you've also missed out Autumn Angel.
No, I was going to get to Autumn Angel. But I wanted to continue the theme of star horses that had a little setback along the way.
I thought we were going timeline.
No, I'm bouncing around the place. So that's 2 clips you've given me now. First the grey-haired joke, and now getting my timeline out of order. We'll talk about I Wish I Win first.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I Wish I Win. Yes, that was him getting beaten by Bella Nipotina. That one hurt in the Doomben 10,000. It was Gary Chittick's birthday over in New Zealand. So the whole Chittick family and also Pete and Sarah Moody were all in New Zealand for that. So I was there on course by myself, and I hadn't been on course for a Group 1 victory yet. And, we were sort of all saying, well, this is it. This is your time to shine, Kat. This is going to be the one that you can get. And when she sort of just got him on the line, and straight away I thought, no, like we've been rolled here.
You knew, did you?
Yeah, yep. I had a feeling that we'd just been beaten, and I tell you what, that was it was a bit of a hard pill to swallow. But at the end of the day, you've got to just be philosophical about it and look at it and think, you know what, there are plenty worse things happening in the world, and we'll bounce back and we'll live to fight another day, which we certainly did a few weeks later.
Now, how rewarding was it? Because as I said, he'd been racing so well, but he hadn't won in over a year. So all of a sudden people are saying, well, how can he be the best horse in the country? He's not winning anything. And he came out, not only won, but he blew them away.
Yeah, look, and I think the thing as well is when you look at it and you go, oh, geez, he hasn't won for over a year, but he's also so lightly raced because we're in a very fortunate position with him being owned by Pete and Mark Chittick that he's also a gelding, so there's no pressure on us to be running him too often or anything like that. He's a horse that I think it's been sort of pretty publicly put out there, the struggles that he faces. A young horse. He was born with very, very crooked front legs, and the team over at Waikato managed him brilliantly early on in his career, and to this day he is still a very sound horse, but we're very mindful of the fact that we need to manage him accordingly and look after him and, wrap him up in cotton wool where we can, sort of not over-race him or overexpose him and that sort of a thing. So he is lightly raced. You don't see him sort of backing up every 2 weeks like some of the superstar horses out there. And I think that's probably something that we just have to remember as well when you look at it and think, oh, geez, he hasn't won in 12 months, but really he's only had, 3 or 4 starts in that time.
And hopefully he can be set for a big spring. He's obviously confirmed for the Everest, so hopefully he can go one better than last year. At this early stage, do we know what the plan of attack might be for him?
Yeah, it probably looks like he'll have a couple of runs, 1 or 2 runs leading into that. He's just started doing some light pre-training back up in Queensland where he had a few weeks off, and yeah, he looks really good. I think having that little spell up there in the Brisbane sun has done him wonders.
Now, you mentioned Autumn Angel, who was the second of your 3 Group 1 successes. How many do you think you'll get to in your career as well? A couple of hundred? Do you reckon that might roll off the tongue?
Oh, gosh, let's not be too presumptuous here, We'll just take it, race by race at the moment, but yeah. Yeah, look, hopefully. She was super that day, and she was another one that sort of the prep hadn't gone entirely to plan, so we had to sort of tweak a few things, and to see her come out and run as well as she did that day, that was really, really exciting. And she's also had a nice break up in Queensland. She'll start doing some work in the sort of the next week or so and build up to hopefully a big spring.
Do we know what the plan might be with her?
We sort of haven't mapped anything out definitely, but I think a horse like her, you've probably got to consider a Caulfield Cup or something like that.
Now, Peter Moody, he's a wonderful trainer. He's a shocking judge. So every time he's been asked for a horse to follow, they've never actually won. So I'm going to ask you the same question, and I mean this. There is no pressure. No pressure at all, because the bar couldn't be set any lower.
Oh, gee, that surprises me a little bit about Moods, actually.
So he's actually a good judge and a good punter. We just get the B set, you reckon?
I think so. I think he might purposefully have given you the bum steer.
That's a bit disappointing.
It is a little bit disappointing, isn't it? But well, we've got a colt that's been sort of working through at home with Gallant Son called Judicial, and he hasn't stepped out yet. So I'd say he'll be one to keep an eye on when he does.
When and where do we anticipate we'll see Judicial on debut?
Hopefully over the next few weeks. Sort of we'll just find the perfect race for him and keep an eye out for him.
If I was capable of growing a mustache, I'd be twirling it right now at the anticipation of having a little bet there with Judicial stepping out on debut. Now, we've loved having a chat to you today about your journey. If people want to say, what makes Kat tick as a person? Take horse racing off the table. What do you like to do? What's your daily routine like? And what makes you smile aside from horse racing?
I think most people that know me, they know that I am absolutely a slave to my little dog, who's a Border Collie cross. He's pretty damn cute, but I'm probably a bit biased in saying that. So, like I said, I'm a genuine slave to him. And one of my favourite things to do after a crappy day at the races or a crappy day at the stables is to go out and take him for a walk or a run and have a podcast going. So maybe be a little bit of Nick Quinn there as well in the background. But just something like that just allows you to completely switch off and take your mind elsewhere. So
there's our promo, Kat. Thank you for that. We'll be making sure we run with that one. Now, Pete and jockeys, it's always quite entertaining when he sometimes gives them a bit of a spray and sometimes doesn't mix his words when he doesn't feel they were written like he would have liked. Do you find yourself in this partnership with Pete, having to be a bit of a diplomat with some of the jockeys, sometimes having to then give them a cuddle after they've copped a spray or deal with them in the days afterwards to get them up and again to go for the team and go for the stable and say it's okay?
Yes, definitely. There's a real good cop, bad cop routine going on there, and Pete is more often than not the bad cop, and then I sort of have to step in as the good cop and patch things over and try and be a bit more diplomatic about things. And it's funny. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure and a lot that goes into having these horses prepped for races. And when things don't go to plan, I can understand Moods having his little tanties, as we've said, but I also completely understand that the jockeys are making split-second decisions and, they're not always going to get them right. So I probably have a more of a diplomatic view to it than what Moods does.
One jockey said when you're both there together and they come back to scale, they don't need the post-race because if you go to speak to them, they've done well. If he goes up, they've done badly.
Yeah, definitely. Or if Moods isn't on course and if they see me on the phone when they're coming back in to scale, they know they're in trouble because if the phone's ringing before they've even gotten off the horse, it's Moods giving them a spray via giving me a spray to pass on to them.
And do you pass it on or do you just simply say he wasn't happy with that?
All I really need to say is he wasn't happy with that. I've never been a sort of person that's been one to sort of throw a tanty like Moods does. And look, I'm sure it'll happen one day, and I hope that you're there on course to witness it because I'm sure it would be quite entertaining. But it hasn't happened yet, so stay tuned for that one.
I might be on the receiving end of it if I stir you up too much. Well, you're going beautifully, Kat, and hopefully after people listen to this, they'll know about the Coleman part of the Moody Coleman combination. Thanks for having a chat and best of luck going forward.
Pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.